I'm Daniil Denkovsky, Bachelor of Medicine. My research into the limits of human life has brought me renown. I've devoted all my energy and remarkable intellect to combating the greatest fear that binds humanity, the inevitability of imminent death.
In a sentence, Pathologic III Quarantine has gotten me incredibly invested in the full release of Pathologic III, slated to be released later this year, God willing. And while it has its fair share of jank, overall I was thoroughly enthralled by everything the game threw at me, despite its short runtime. Since seemingly just making one video on Pathologic hasn't quite scratched the bowl-shaped itch in my brain, I am here yet again to make another self-indulgent analysis, but this time to talk about the themes and ideas that I've personally drawn from Pathologic Quarantine. I won't really be talking about the gameplay because, to be honest, I kind of don't care that it's a little rough in its current state. Pathologic 2 is basically as close to a perfect game as you can get, in my opinion, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm drinking that Ice Pick Lodge Kool-Aid. I have faith that with sufficient time, a lot of the clunkiness of the systems will be ironed out. And just like they said in their most recent FAQ, they're already making a sequel to a sequel, one that will require innovation, or else risk hitting a stagnant dead end. So, with that all said, despite Quarantine being so short, I'm already incredibly interested and surprised in where Pathologic 3 is going to take its narrative, especially when compared to 2. In my opinion, the Haruspex's story has always been one about granting life and saving the town, in one way or another. He's a healer who gets unique insights into the nature of the world, partially because of his heritage, but also because of his openness. He's willing to give the steppe a chance, which in turn gives the town a chance to survive this outbreak. In contrast, the Bachelors story has always been one about a man destroying a town to defeat death. The Bachelor denies and is denied the chance to learn from the kin. He doesn't believe, and thus he doesn't see. At his core, Daniil is a rationalizer. Anything scary is just a creature conjured by his mind, or a person in a mask, even in the cases where they are so much more than that. And because of this mentality, the Bachelor sees the kin's ramblings as just that. There is no Shabnak, stupid. I'm just going insane. This characterization of the Bachelor sets the ground for a story about colonial, enlightened Western forces butting heads with archaic ontologies, where the town rejects this cruel, unknown individual, thus creating a self-fulfilling prophecy about the kind of cruel person the Bachelor will become, but also always kind of has been. Daniil's characterization was clearly a priority for Ice Pick Lodge when creating Quarantine, and you can feel their intent because Daniil's personality is really strong in the demo, giving the player a really rounded view of this bitter, broken bachelor. Not only is his dialogue great, as always, but now we also get the chance to peer into the mind of Daniil directly in a way that feels kind of raw and intimate. On the flip side, I also loved the parts of the game where you're suddenly ejected from the role of the Bachelor, talking to yourself in the second person, and getting to see the kind of asshole he can be when you're not holding the reins. While these two design choices might almost seem antithetical, the way that Ice Pick Lodge has put them together helps to give the player just a great holistic insight into the Bachelor in a way that just blows me away. And his other mechanics are just as rich in personality. Take the changes to reputation as an example. In Pathologic 2, Artemy just has vague notions of how people feel about him across the town, a choice that makes the districts feel unique and lived in. But in Quarantine, this has been turned into a mathematical line chart, one that essentializes the entirety of the town down to just a few numbers. The reputation system also shaped your actions a lot more in 2. You didn't just want to go around murdering people, because then the town would hate you, and next thing you know, you're having to harvest organs to sell for food. But in Quarantine, killing doesn't affect your reputation. Instead, the mechanical incentive to not murder is because it makes the Bachelor feel bad. Like, what a self-centered asshole. That's so good. I couldn't help but think about how flat Artemy felt in comparison, especially because he's a less active agent in his own story, more a person subject to the situation he's been thrown into. I love how sweet Artemy can be when he's talking to kids, and I'm sure that the way he struggles with his family identity really hits home for some people. But personally, I'm someone who doesn't have that kind of tension with my racial identities and lived experiences and family expectations. So his story isn't the most relevant to my life. But as an academic who believes that their ideas are worthwhile and who struggles under the crushing weight of the academy as a whole, I really get Daniel. You know, the way his sleep is kinda fucked up, his social awkwardness, his overinflated ego, and crushing self-doubt. Oh my god, and the substance abuse? He's just like me, for real. But a lot of this is stuff that already existed in Pathologic Classic. Out of all the roots from that game, it seems like The Bachelors would be the easiest to update to a more contemporary format. Its foundations are just that strong. No one denies that Classic is jank, but it's generally agreed that if you're giving the game a try, you're playing the Bachelor's route, because his story and level design are just that good. Which would leave me, personally, very stumped about how to give this story new life. It'd be easy to make Pathologic 2, but with The Bachelor. The game systems work. The story works. Bam. Why try to change anything? Luckily, I don't work at Icepick Lodge, and the developers there are much smarter than me, because what they came up with has really piqued my interest. A game where instead of running around town completing random errands, you're actually playing the singular doctor in town, one who's in charge of the quarantine measures, the food rationing, town edicts, of developing a vaccine and defeating death, at least in that singular way, which itself would be compelling. But this isn't the first time we're experiencing this outbreak, and the game knows it. In fact, this isn't even the first time The Bachelor has experienced this play. The game seemingly isn't just going to be about defeating death, creating the vaccine, saving the polyhedron, and destroying the town, but about doing it perfectly. In the same ways that players reload and reload and reload their games to rewrite history and this play to get their perfect ending. Now, in-universe, the Bachelor himself is taking advantage of the sorcerous nature of the town, the cathedral, and of time itself to get his perfect ending. Neurotically obsessed with fixing his own past mistakes. And like, on a surface level, it's so fucking rad to make the Bachelor this time travel wizard. It might seem out of place given Daniel's distaste for the magical, but as he puts it, sometimes with a perspective shift, what seems like sorcery is just science. Which is also fucking perfect that this man is saying, well, actually, it's quite reasonable when you think about it, to time travel that's seemingly fueled by putting others out of their misery to steal their time. But when I start thinking about the narrative effects of this choice, I can't get over how genuinely genius it is. Like, what an incredibly fascinating and telling decision. Not only is it emblematic of the Bachelor's personality, again, this neurotic freak who's obsessed with getting a perfect victory, not only over death itself, but now the game. But there are also other smaller thematic effects that I find fascinating. One little thing I like is how the Bachelor and the Haruspecs now mirror each other even more in this version. Artemy has always been able to butcher the physical bodies of the dead around him, a unique attribute that defined his role in this play. But now, he isn't entirely alone, seeing that Daniil is able to harvest time, or life maybe, from his patients to fuel his miraculous powers. Which, now that I say it, also speaks to Pathologic Classic and its themes about the blood cost of miracles and utopias. So, on top of these interesting surface-level narrative choices, I can't help but go a meta layer deeper and see how this whole system acknowledges the player directly. Like I said, Daniil is basically save-scumming his way through the story of Pathologic, specifically to get his perfect ending, likely in a similar way that actual players did in order to save everyone in Classic or 2. This fact really blurs the line between the player and Daniil, criticizing both of them by asking when enough is enough. Going another layer deeper, this criticism of repetition and circularity and perfection is also applicable to the developers, and the way that they have neurotically attempted to tell this story again and again. I'm particularly interested to see what the full game has to say on this, given Pathologic 2 and its thematic obsession with evolution and stagnation. And again, from the Q&A, it's clearly been on their minds when creating Pathologic 3. In the end, it's hard to make any definitive conclusions yet. Quarantine was just a demo, after all. But for me, it was a really exciting demo, because the ideas and themes that have already been unearthed are deeply, deeply compelling. Ideas that are going to make for a truly unique showing of everyone's favorite Plague play, and themes that I'm going to be thinking about up until and likely well after its full release. If you're another Pathologic head and stumbled across this video first, I also have an analysis of the endings of Pathologic 2 that you can check out if you're curious to hear my thoughts, or are just similarly obsessed with the funny Plague game. But either way, I thank you dearly for your time and for listening.